He says he's fine. You ask him what's wrong, and he shrugs. You feel the silence wrap around you like a cold room you can't leave. He's right there beside you, but it feels like he's already gone. He's kind, maybe even loving in his own way. But the deeper part of him, it's locked behind a door you're not sure you'll ever find the key to. Maybe you felt it, that ache of loving someone who won't let you all the way in, who turns away emotionally when things get real, who seems calm on the surface, but you can feel the storm just under his skin. And then you wonder, is it me? Am I asking too much? Wanting too much? Being too much? It's not too much to want connection. It's not too much to crave intimacy that feels alive, safe, and open. But here's the truth: what's keeping him distant might have very little to do with you, and everything to do with what he never learned to name. The kind of pain that doesn't scream, but simmers. The kind of shame that tells him it's safer not to feel. There's a part of him tender, aching, forgotten that no one's ever touched. Maybe not even his own mother. Maybe not even himself. But there's one feminine trait, soft but powerful, that can reach him in that place. Not by force, not by logic, not by trying harder, but by something older than words. This video is for the woman who knows that love isn't supposed to be this lonely. For the man who has learned to armor himself so deeply that he can't feel his own heart. For anyone who's tired of surface-level connection and craves the kind of closeness that heals from the inside out. And no, we're not talking about being passive or overly accommodating. We're not talking about playing games or twisting yourself into someone you're not. This isn't about fixing him. It's about remembering a power within you that society told you was weakness. It's the kind of feminine presence that Carl Jung once gestured toward but never fully captured in words. Because it's not a theory. It's a presence. A way of being that melts emotional walls, not by breaking them down, but by making them unnecessary. You've seen glimpses of it, maybe in the way a grandmother touched your hand when you were falling apart. Maybe in the silence between two people who don't need to speak to be heard. And if you've forgotten what that feels like, this is your reminder. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change how you see yourself and the people you love forever. If something in you feels like it already knows what I'm talking about, hit that like button. Subscribe. Not because I told you to, but because you don't want to lose this moment. He wasn't always like this. You know that. You've seen the other version of him, the one who laughs without hesitation, the one who lets his guard down when he thinks no one is watching. The version of him that shows up for 5 seconds, just enough to make you believe in the potential, then disappears behind the same wall. It's not your imagination. He does feel things deeply. But the moment you get too close, emotionally close, something in him tightens, withdraws. He shuts down or shifts the energy, maybe with a joke, maybe with silence, maybe with sudden irritability. You sense the tension in his chest before he even knows it's there. And if you try to reach for him when he's in that space, it only gets worse. It's a pattern you've probably lived through more times than you can count. So here's the part no one says out loud. You can't love him out of that pattern, but there is something that reaches beneath it. It's not more understanding. It's not more explanations. It's not better timing. What breaks through that emotional armor without force is something he doesn't even know he's starving for. Your full feminine presence. Not performance. Not perfection. Presence. It sounds simple, but it isn't easy. Especially when you've been trained your whole life to hustle for closeness, to earn safety, to twist yourself into something lovable. So when you encounter his emotional wall, your instinct is to prove your value. You start performing emotional labor, carrying the whole connection on your back, and it breaks you down. You try softness, but it's layered with fear. You try strength, but it comes with control. You try patience, but it's soaked in resentment. Because you're not just trying to reach him, you're trying not to lose yourself in the process. And still, that part of you that longs to be met, really met, won't go quiet. This is where the paradox begins. Because the only energy that can melt his resistance is the one that isn't trying to melt anything at all. True feminine presence isn't a strategy. It's not something you do. It's a return to yourself. It's not in your words. It's in your breath. It's in the way you remain open without chasing. It's in the way you hold your own emotional ground without collapsing or closing. It's the calm in your body that tells his nervous system, it's safe here, even if you don't know how to feel. But don't mistake this for passivity. There is nothing passive about this kind of feminine. This is not the girl who waits around. This is the woman who's rooted. Rooted in the truth of what she feels. Rooted in her own emotional safety. Rooted in a self-respect so deep, she will not force herself on anyone. She does not abandon herself for love. And because of that, paradoxically, her presence becomes the very space where another can finally take off the mask. Carl Jung once wrote about anima, the feminine soul image within a man. But what he couldn't put into clinical language is how that image often stays buried until it's mirrored by someone real. Not someone perfect, but someone emotionally available to herself. That's what draws him out. Not pressure, not pine, not logic, but something ancient and still and magnetic. You don't have to chase. You don't have to fix. You just have to return to the part of you that doesn't perform for love, but simply is love. Stay with me, because this goes deeper. He doesn't even realize it, but he's watching you closely. Not for your words, not for your beauty, not for your kindness, but for something deeper. He's looking for contradiction. He wants to believe it's safe to let go, but his body is trained for danger. His heart longs for softness, but his mind expects betrayal. So when you say you love him, part of him doesn't trust it. Not because you're unloving, but because love has never felt safe. He watches how you handle his silence. He listens to how you respond when he disappears into his cave. He notices whether your eyes tighten when he hesitates to share. He may not say it, but he's watching, wondering if you'll turn him into a project, or if, just maybe, you'll let him be human. He doesn't want to be handled. He wants to be met, not managed, not healed, met. He's waiting to see if you can feel your own feelings while letting him have his. Because most people try to crack his armor by pushing, or begging, or outsmarting it. But that only deepens his shame. Because deep down, he already feels like a failure for not being open, not being expressive, not being the man you deserve. And every time you try to reach him from a place of desperation or pressure, even if it's coming from love, it confirms that he's still not enough. But when you rest into your own presence, when you stop trying to pull anything from him, something changes. You become the first person in his life who doesn't ask him to be different. And that is when he starts to wonder what it might be like to be real. Not fixed, not expected, just real. There is a moment, maybe you felt it, when he looks at you, and for a second, he lets something soften. His body relaxes, his eyes drop their guard. And it's not because you said the right thing, it's because you were still enough inside yourself that he could hear his own heart again. That's not magic. That's nervous system safety. That's feminine presence. But let me be clear. This isn't about becoming some emotional safe haven for a man who refuses to grow. This isn't about mothering, or waiting, or holding space endlessly for someone who doesn't meet you halfway. This is about your power, the kind that doesn't need to push to be felt, the kind that stands in a room and changes the temperature just by breathing, the kind that doesn't rescue but invites. There is no checklist for this. You don't achieve it by reading the right book or saying the right script. You remember it. You remember how to be in your own body when someone else is losing themselves. You remember how to breathe when the other person shuts down. You remember that your softness isn't a weakness, it's a frequency. And that frequency, when embodied, not faked, not forced, reaches places in him that even he has forgotten. Some men will run from it, because it strips away their distractions. Others will feel something they've never felt before. Peace. And from that peace comes the possibility of connection. Not performance, not pretending. Connection. Real. Raw. Mutual. You can't force him to open, but your presence might help him realize he's allowed to. If this touched something you thought no one saw, he might not say thank you. He might not even understand what's happening inside him. But something in his chest loosens when you stop trying to fix him. You think it's your effort that brings people closer, but often it's your stillness that creates the space they've never had. There is something heartbreakingly beautiful about being in the presence of someone who doesn't flinch when you can't be charming, who doesn't rush to fill the silence, who doesn't make your emotion their emergency. That's what you become when you return to your true feminine. It's not a performance. It's a soft inner gravity. He grew up learning to contain everything, tighten his jaw, bury the need, apologize for being tender. For some, the only time they cried without shame was when no one was watching. He doesn't need a fixer, he needs a mirror, not the kind that reflects who he thinks he should be, but the one that shows him who he really is, even when he's not impressive. He's never going to say, "I'm scared to be seen." He'll just pull away. He'll distract himself. He'll say, "I'm just tired," and mean it. And you'll feel the emptiness creeping in again. Here's where your power comes in, not by chasing, but by sitting in your own presence long enough to remember. His disconnection doesn't mean you're unworthy. This is where so many women break themselves. They mistake his withdrawal as a reflection of their value. So they try harder. They offer more. They contort into what they think he'll stay for. But feminine power doesn't hustle. She waits. Not in passivity, but in fullness. She waits in herself. She doesn't leave her own body to earn affection. This is what he's never seen. A woman who holds herself, not as a punishment, not as a threat, but because she knows how precious her own energy is. When you stop overgiving, when you stop explaining your worth, when you sit quietly in your enoughness, that's when the silence becomes louder than your words. That's when he notices you in a new way, because something inside him recognizes that you are not going to beg, that you're not here to rescue him from his own emotional distance. And for the first time, he has to face himself. Most people try to crack his walls with intensity. You dissolve them with presence. You don't make his emotions your responsibility, but you also don't abandon your own. You stop reaching across the chasm. You sit on your side with open arms and let him decide if he's ready to meet you. And here's the thing. Not every man will. Some will walk away. Not because you did anything wrong, but because he's not ready to walk through the door you've opened. But the man who is ready, he won't just come closer. He will soften. He will tremble. He will remember the part of him he buried years ago and begin to feel again. And when that moment comes, he won't need you to do anything. Just stay. Just be. Because your presence is not just melting his walls. It's showing him what love without conditions looks like. If you're still with me, you're feeling it. This is your power. He won't tell you, but something about you disarms him. It confuses him, even unsettles him. Not because you're dramatic, not because you demand too much, but because you don't. Because your energy doesn't scream. It listens, and he doesn't know what to do with that. He's used to people fighting for his attention or storming out when he retreats. But you sit there, not cold, not detached, just there, fully present. You don't collapse when he pulls away. You don't chase when he goes quiet. You stay with your own heart, even as his is out of reach. And something about that presence haunts him, because in your stillness, he feels the weight of his own absence. He's never had to look at it before. He's never had to feel what it's like to be next to someone who isn't trying to manage him. Someone who can hold love and boundaries in the same breath. It startles something deep inside him. A boy who once cried himself to sleep. A teenager who had no safe place to fall. A man who became so good at pretending he was okay that he forgot he wasn't. You remind him. Not with lectures, not with pity, just with your presence. And let's be honest, sometimes it hurts. Sometimes your softness feels like rejection. Because when you choose not to chase, it stirs up your own wounds. The fear that if you don't reach for him, you'll lose him. The fear that if you stop explaining, he'll never understand. The fear that if you don't carry the whole relationship, it will fall apart. And maybe it will. But maybe it needs to. Because there's a difference between a man who needs time to feel safe and a man who expects you to abandon yourself to keep him comfortable. You are not here to be his emotional crutch. You are not here to prove your worth through suffering. Feminine power is not about how much you can endure. It's about how deeply you can stay with yourself, even when someone else can't. There's a part of you that's been aching for this clarity, not because you want to give up, but because you're tired of giving in to dynamics that leave you drained, to love that feels more like a transaction, to relationships that demand you disappear in order to be accepted. And something in you is waking up. You're remembering what it feels like to sit in your own soul. Not waiting, not fixing, not proving, just being. And from that space, Love is no longer about control. It's no longer about keeping someone close. It becomes about truth. Because the truth is, when you return to this level of presence, everything becomes clear. Who is capable of meeting you? Who is hiding behind emotional fog? Who is drawn to your essence, not just your effort? You stop negotiating your worth. You stop begging to be seen. You start choosing yourself, not as an act of resistance, but of reverence. And from there, something rare begins to form. The kind of connection that doesn't rush, doesn't force, doesn't manipulate. It breathes, it waits, it deepens. If your heart feels full or heavy, or both, trust that. He might not call it love at first. He might not even recognize it. Because what you're offering him is something he has no name for, just a feeling that pulls him closer without demanding anything. And that's what makes it powerful. Because he doesn't feel cornered. He doesn't feel shamed. He doesn't feel like a task to complete or a project to manage. He just feels held. Not in your arms, but in your energy. The part of you that doesn't flinch when he's struggling. The part that doesn't retreat into anxiety when he's distant. You don't go to war with his silence. You don't interpret his slowness as a personal rejection. You let him have his process while staying deeply rooted in yours. And for the first time, he's allowed to be unsure, to be messy, to be human. And you don't abandon your heart just because his is still finding its way back. That kind of emotional maturity isn't loud. It's not flashy, but it's unforgettable. Because every woman he's ever known tried to teach him something. You reminded him of what it means to feel safe. Not coddled, not catered to. Safe. Safe to feel. Safe to fall apart. Safe to be vulnerable without it being weaponized. And maybe he's not ready yet. Maybe he still runs. Maybe he still goes quiet for days. Maybe he still hasn't learned how to say, "I'm scared." But he knows. He knows something is different. And that difference is you. Not the you who hides her feelings to keep the peace. Not the you who performs strength while quietly collapsing inside. Not the you who sacrifices her softness just to avoid being too much. The real you. The woman who stays soft and grounded. Who opens without chasing. Who feels deeply without drowning. You don't hold space for him because he asked you to. You hold it because that's who you are when you're not fighting for love. You stopped needing to be understood to offer understanding. You stopped needing validation to be validating. You stopped needing control to feel safe. And because of that, your love doesn't grab, it invites. There's no trap in your tenderness. There's no pressure in your presence. Just clarity. And clarity is rare, terrifying, magnetic. It brings up all the places in him that still want to run. But it also gives him something he's never had, a reason to stay. Because real love doesn't make demands. It makes contact. And when he feels that contact, not with his mind, but with his nervous system, it rewrites something ancient. You're not fixing him. You're just not abandoning yourself anymore. And that in itself is healing. If you're breathing differently right now, if your chest feels softer, it's because part of you remembers what this is supposed to feel like. Maybe you've been told your whole life that your sensitivity is a problem, that your softness is a liability, that your intuition makes you irrational, that your warmth makes you weak. So you tucked those parts away. You learned to be strong, to be chill, to be low maintenance, to be cool with things that secretly broke your heart. You learned to swallow your truth so someone else wouldn't leave. And maybe you became the kind of woman who keeps it together, who's calm in chaos, who loves without asking for too much, who holds space for everyone but herself. But that part of you, the soft, intuitive, emotionally alive part, she never left. She just went quiet. She's been waiting, not for a perfect man, but for you to return to her, to stop abandoning her in the name of being lovable. Because here's the paradox. The very trait that melts his emotional walls is the one you've been taught to bury. It's your tenderness, your capacity to feel, your open-heartedness in a world that rewards numbness. And yes, that part of you has been hurt. It's been misunderstood. It's been met with silence, rejection, even punishment. But it is not the problem. It's the power. When you stop hiding her, when you let her speak, breathe, move again, you stop needing love that feels like survival. You stop choosing people who make you earn their attention. You stop calling crumbs a feast. You stop interpreting emotional unavailability as mystery. You see it for what it is, a shield, and you no longer make it your job to crack it open. Instead, you let your presence speak. You become the kind of woman who doesn't beg to be seen, because she already sees herself. You become the woman who can sit in silence with a man and still be heard. You become the woman whose energy feels like truth, so he can finally stop pretending. You become the woman who doesn't lose herself trying to hold him, because she's already holding herself. And that woman, she doesn't chase. She doesn't shrink. She doesn't over-explain. She breathes. She feels. She stays. And in that staying, something happens. He softens. Not because you told him to, because he feels something that words could never create. A presence that doesn't threaten him. A stillness that doesn't shame him. A love that doesn't control him. You don't pull him into intimacy. You create the space where intimacy wants to rise. And if he's ready, truly ready, he'll step in. Not because you convinced him, but because your presence called him back to himself. If you've spent years thinking you were too much, or not enough, this is your reminder. You were never either. You were just powerful in a world that doesn't know what to do with real feminine energy. But the ones who are ready, they recognize it. They lean in. They stay. So here you are now, no longer trying to be lovable by being less. No longer twisting into someone else's expectation. No longer chasing intimacy that costs you your peace. No longer mistaking quiet suffering for strength. You've returned to something deeper. Something that doesn't need to be earned, proven, or performed. Your presence. And from that presence, everything changes. Because the way you love isn't transactional anymore. It's not rooted in fear. It's not fused with desperation. It's calm, clear, powerful. He can feel it before you speak. And if he's ready, he will move toward you not to possess, but to meet, to match. Because the truth is, the one feminine trait that melts his emotional walls is not submission. It's not control. It's not emotional labor wrapped in a soft voice. It's you. You as you are when you no longer betray yourself to be understood. You, when your emotions have room to exist without explanation. You, when you embody stillness, not silence. You, when you stop proving and start embodying. You are the trait. You are the space. You are the medicine. And here's the secret most people miss. This energy, this presence was never about him. It was always about you. Because when you return to your own body, your own breath, your own rhythm, you stop trying to get love. And you start being love. That's what he feels. That's what changes everything. The right man won't need to be pulled. He'll feel your presence like a home he didn't know he lost. And if he's ready to be real, if he's ready to drop the mask, he will. Not to win you, but to meet you. And if he's not, you'll still be whole. Because you're no longer shrinking to keep anyone close. You're no longer bargaining with your worth. You are resting in the deepest truth you know. That real love doesn't chase or control. It remembers. And it chooses again and again from a place of presence. You've been the medicine all along. So stay soft. Stay rooted. Stay home in yourself. That's where real love finds you. And when it does, it won't ask you to become less of anything. It will meet you at your full depth and rise to meet it. If this moved you, if your heart feels a little more seen, a little more heard, a little more whole, subscribe to this channel. Like this video, not because you have to, but because this is the kind of truth that deserves to live in more hearts. Thank you for being here.